that some of the actions we've taken has generated some criticism from predictable corners. You know, sure you will remember they tried to impeach me. They tried to disbar me. And it was hearing the stories of people who've told me what it has meant to them to have an Attorney General stand up and fight for them and protect them and keep them safe. That has helped me get through that and push through all that kind of negativity and stand up for people and stand up for all Virginians. Like those whose lives have been directly benefited. When we changed the state's position on marriage equality, helped to bring marriage equality to Virginia, and what we're continuing to do to end discrimination in Virginia wherever we see it. I could tell you thousands, literally thousands of stories I've heard from folks who've told me what it's meant to them and to their families. And I will never forget the day that the Supreme Court allowed the Fourth Circuit decision in Bostick versus Rainey to stand. Incidentally, today is the 2-year anniversary of that Fourth Circuit opinion in Bostick versus Rainey. And I remember standing on the steps of the courthouse in Arlington talking about what it meant to Virginia now that marriage equality had come. And at the same time I was talking at those courthouse steps in Arlington, 2 people were trying desperately to call me and talk to me. Carol Shaw and Mary Townley, 2 of the plaintiffs in that case. And they were trying to get in touch with me because they wanted me to celebrate their marriage that day. So when I got to talk to them, I said, but Mary, Carol, you all are already married. They were married in California years earlier. It's just that Virginia didn't recognize it. And they said, well, can we renew our vows? Will you help us do that? And so we got in the car, we drove down I-95, and I will never forget standing on the steps of the John Marshall Courthouse in Richmond. And we were helping them renew their vows together, Mary and Carol, and their daughter Emily, and everybody, they were so happy. And by the end, everybody was crying. Mary, Carol, Emily, me, all the reporters. They were tears of joy. And also, like the people who have been helped by what we've been able to do for Dreamers to help get them an affordable college education in Virginia, their home state. We made that announcement at the Northern Virginia Community College up in Northern Virginia, and there were a bunch of Dreamers there. And they all came up to me, and they were crying because of how happy they were, and they told me this was going to change their lives forever. And I remember being at Girl State down in Farmville later that summer, and I told that story. Somebody's from Farmville, all right. I remember telling that story to Girl State. They were probably 500 or 600 rising seniors, high school. And I told that story. And after I finished talking and I was walking out the auditorium, about halfway up, a student grabbed my arm and she said, you remember that story you told about how the decision you made would change Dreamers' lives forever? And I was like, yeah. And she said, well, I'm one of them. And she grew up in Southwest. She had always dreamed of going to UVA. But she knew that for her and her family, the tuition was out of reach. And she looked at me right in the eye and she said, now I have a shot. Yeah. Well, wouldn't you know, I started walking out again. 2 rows behind her, another student grabbed me and said, I heard what she said. And I'm one too. And she grew up outside of Richmond. She wanted to go to MCV or VCU and enter the health professions. And so now, hundreds, probably thousands of Virginia Dreamers who have grown up here in Virginia, they've done well in high school, going to college now, beginning to climb the ladder of success and become a part of Virginia's next generation of skilled workers, entrepreneurs, and researchers. I've also spoken with so many parents and brothers and sisters who have lost a loved one to a heroin overdose. And I can't tell you what it's meant to the families to know that their Attorney General feels their pain. And they're so glad to know that someone's listening. And we have put together a multifaceted approach to try to make sure that we turn this epidemic around so that we don't lose all these Virginians to these dangerous drugs. 900 families last year lost loved ones to these dangerous drugs. And together, we're going to turn it around. And we've been to African American churches and minority communities to talk about police-community relations. And it has meant so much for them to have the top law officer, the top legal officer for the state, to be there talking about these issues and listening to them and understanding their sense of frustration. And by the way, weren't the mothers of the movement great? These heartbroken mothers telling the stories of the pain of gun violence. And what I heard them the other night was that they share the same goals that we're working on right now in Virginia, trying to make sure that law enforcement can protect our communities and to make sure that everyone is treated equally and fairly, and those are two goals we all share. Now, helping people in these ways, and this is just 4 things. I haven't even begun to talk about the work we're doing to transform how Virginia is preventing and responding to domestic violence and campus sexual assaults, human trafficking, child exploitation, or what we're doing on climate change and consumer protection and so many other things. And that's why I love this job. And that's why I wake up every single morning thinking about how I can use the law and the resources of this great job in order to help people, to help Virginians, to help all Virginians. That's also why I'm proud to be a Virginia Democrat. And that's why I'm so proud of what I've seen here in Philadelphia. Because we are all about inclusion and optimism. And you compare that with what we saw in Cleveland. You know, I was watching that and I kind of felt like I was watching a presidential convention out of a movie like Mad Max or something. You know, people shouting, you know. It's just, and speaker after speaker trying to intimidate and instill fear in people in order to try to get votes. And Donald Trump saying, I alone can keep you safe. You know, I don't want an I alone president. I want an us together president. So what we've seen here in Philly is a positive vision for our future and for our country. We've heard such great testimony. We've got one more day. It's going to be a great day and a great evening later tonight. And then we're going to go back. And we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to get to work. and we're going to elect Hillary Clinton, and we are going to elect Tim Kaine because we know Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine